You can hardly look at the news anymore today without being bombarded by the news of what's been going on with tariffs lately. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the implications that we might see for ourselves and our customers without freaking out, right? We've been through this kind of stuff before, so come along with me. We're going to talk about tariffs today.
Essex, a helping hand with your land.
When we start talking about this topic, the one place I think it's important to start from is when I say, don't freak out, because this industry has been here before. When you're getting your news about what's happening with these tariffs, oftentimes it's coming from places that profit from your hysteria, right? And they profit from getting people stirred up and worried and concerned about things because it drives viewership, it drives clicks, and so that concern is profitable to them. So we need to take a little bit of time to understand our industry and what's going on a little bit more before we can kind of start to make some informed decisions about what's really going on. And before we start talking about tariffs itself, we need to talk about the places that we've been in the past here, right? If you look at our markets, our manufacturers that we deal with, these are global supply chains that have footprints in a lot of different countries. And not only are they global supply chains, they're complex supply chains that touch things like trucking and steel and other things. And we've seen pricing swings before. This is not going to be the first time that we see prices jump around. And in the not too distant past, you might have heard me talk about steel surcharges. We were at a point that we saw steel prices rapidly increasing, and the way that a lot of our manufacturers chose to respond to that was with a quick steel surcharge. And much the same thing happened with trucking as well. As we went through all those COVID years and trucking was getting really expensive, we saw some freight rates increases and some temporary surcharges thrown in place. So to say that this industry has had nothing like this before is completely wrong, right? We have responded to pricing fluctuations before, and we will here again. So if you've been a lucky one who's not watched the news, exactly what's going on here, right? Our government has been looking for opportunistic places to place tariffs in order to favor domestic manufacturing. I've paid tariffs before in a lot of different cases, and a tariff in and of itself is very simply a tax paid upon goods that are being imported into a country. And where this has hit Essex before is oftentimes when we're dealing with customers that are outside of our country. Oftentimes they're surprised when we ship things to them, and then they have additional import duties or tariffs that have to be paid when that goes into that country. Now, that tariff is often not paid on the retail price of a product that you see. It's going to be paid on a declared value. Now, that declared value sometimes might be a complete piece of equipment at a wholesale price that was built out of the country and is being brought in, or it could be applied to parts, some sub-assemblies and components and that kind of thing that are made in other countries and brought in. So when you see things like a tariff being announced, say 25% that they've been talking about on Canada or Mexico, you shouldn't necessarily look at things and say that everything is about to get 25% more expensive, because you're not necessarily paying the tariff yourself on that retail price. It's a much lower wholesale component declared value that's actually being tariffed as these things are being moved between countries. So while we've seen price increases before, when we're talking things like steel and trucking and tariffs and stuff, let's remember that this isn't the first time that tariffs have come up. Back in 2019, during Trump's first administration, tariffs were put on China before, right? 25%, I believe at that point, was the number that they put on this stuff. And while we did see some small increases in prices on some things at that point for parts supplies and stuff that do come out of China, the additional 10% or so that they're throwing around now, I don't see is going to have a huge impact on the pricing of the stuff that we see out here on the lot. Now, in preparation for this video here, I did actually spend 15 minutes or so walking around here looking for things that are gonna have some big price increases, right? What's the scary example that I can give you? And honestly, I can't find much in terms of China specifically. Essex here has what I believe is some credibility when it comes to what we sell, and we want to be able to sell you things that we know have good quality and long-term parts support. So generally, we're a little selective about what we sell. We don't seek out the cheapest stuff that's out there on the market, because a lot of those things could tarnish our reputation. And so when we're looking at these things like flail mowers and stuff out of here, we get a lot of things that come in from Europe, a lot of stuff from Italy. But there are a handful of examples that I can give you out here of stuff that comes out of Mexico and Canada. There is certainly a lot of agriculture to be found out on the Canadian plains, and for that reason, there are several equipment manufacturers that do have factories up in that part of Canada. And in a lot of cases, they're making equipment that is tailored to those markets, right? Large areas of flat plains farming. One of the pieces that we do get here at Messick's that comes out of that area are these New Holland air seeders back here behind me. These two are not sold, they are available, and they have been arrived here in the last week or so. Now, we definitely have seen cases where the companies that make stuff in these facilities have been rushing as much equipment as possible across the border. I heard of one case here the other day where a manufacturer had a truck sitting there on the border waiting for what was thought to be this temporary tariff to drop so that they could rush as much across as what they were able to. And that certainly sounds like it has happened. So we're hearing cases where there's many months of inventory now from these Canadian suppliers that's been rushed across here in the United States. That's going to create a little bit of a buffer room here. So if we're looking at these tariffs and figuring that there's probably a negotiation tool here that's being kind of put to work a little bit, we've got a buffer here of equipment between ourselves and our suppliers that we're not going to have to really bear the costs of any increases that might come out of that negotiation for several months. Now, I've stretched to find real concerning examples here. Did Googling online, did a little bit of research. I'm not an expert on this topic, just doing the best that I can to help share some information. And I was able to find that there is one New Holland tractor that comes out of Mexico, but it is a model that is not at all popular in our markets. I might see one a year floating around here. And while Kubota does seem to have an assembly facility in Mexico, it is there in order to build things that are headed to South American countries. It is not stuff that we see up here in the US. I have never seen a made in Mexico sticker on a Kubota piece before. So while I can find those handful examples of places where, we've got a little bit of Canada, a little bit of Mexico, a majority of what you find out here in these parking lots are actually not imported. There's a lot of domestic work done in this equipment. And while we are bringing stuff in, we're getting a lot of Krone stuff out of Germany. There's probably more European countries out here than you'll find than even really Canada and Mexico. A global network of suppliers that we work with here at Messick's. And that comes down to what I think is the most important point of this conversation. It is my absolute goal for Messick's to be more than just a retailer to you. When we're out here making videos on equipment, telling you about our company, spending time out with you here in the parking lot. The point of all this is to build relationships, right? We're not looking for just the one-off sale of something. We're looking to be a partner over decades that's helping you out with your equipment needs, providing service, selling parts, and all of these things. The partners that are going to serve you best through these times are going to be the ones that have a variety of things to offer, that haven't gone and hitched their wagon to a single supplier that might be overexposed to these areas where there might be some tariffs applied. I'm sitting here on top of this snowblower. This Land Pride one here is made in Kansas. There's Canadian ones in this parking lot too, and if we start to see a lot of these prices shift, we're in a position here at Messick's to be able to lead you to some things that might be priced right today that might have seemed expensive years ago. And that's hopefully kind of what these tariffs are intended for, right? It's to create bias and advantage domestic manufacturing. And sitting here in this seat and dealing with a lot of different companies, we're able to help you pick and choose the ones that are going to be the best value in the future, because that is likely to change here over the time as the government is pulling these levers. Future Neil here. Even in the course of us editing this video here, more things continue to happen, and I have some instances here where I thought I could give you some black and white examples of actual pricing changes that we've seen. I had an implement manufacturer here send out a price increase bulletin of 3% across the board of everything that was in inventory, 6% for some stuff coming in the future, but with an interesting caveat in there that if these tariffs don't actually take place, they were going to refund some of that money back to customers that might have bought those units. And I thought that was a really cool way for a stand-up company to address this problem. Another thing that we had happen was a parts price increase with one vendor. And this one was surprising and concerning to us when it happened, because normally when we get sent price increases for parts, they come out and the price file comes out. It's a week or two before it takes effect. But this one came out really urgently, going into effect immediately. And we scrambled and jumped into the data to see exactly what was in there, because we were certainly worried to see something come out in a non-traditional way. Ultimately, when we compared the data in that file against the inventory that we have and what we actually sell here, About 75 part numbers were impacted, and they went up by an average of 6%. So not nearly as dire as what you could assume based upon what you hear in the news. I also thought it was worth throwing out here too, that we're not trying to minimize this problem for any of you. We're in a place here that we can look at this stuff and our vendors and suppliers and feel like we can navigate this situation pretty well, but I don't want to minimize the discomfort that you might be sensing if your industry, your business doesn't have the same nimbleness here that we feel like we do. If you're in that situation, we certainly feel for you. We know what it's like to be in business, and if we're working here together in some fashion, let me just say that Messick's is here to navigate these challenges with you together the best that we can. So in summary, we've been here before, right? Steel surcharges, tariffs, trucking, it's all happened in this business. And as much concern might be thrown around out there in the news, I don't believe it's a reason to freak out. We know how to ride this ride. We know how to go through it with you. So if we're able to help for equipment purchases that you're looking at or parts or service needs for a machine you've already got, give us a call at Messick's. As we're here, this is what we do. Available at 800-222-3373 or online at messicks.com. Given where we've already been and see, okay, this is getting wordy. Okay, let's break down